microphone for music.
What do I need to do?
I don't think we're going to take any calls. Just nice and uncomfortably close. If it's close and uncomfortable, it's right where it's supposed to be.
Right, there you go.
All this gets edited out, right? Because we're not on live yet.
Well, we're on camera, so.
Jackson's very own News Talk 970 WKHM at 9:36. And we welcome to the studio not the normal personalities for Thinking Real Estate, but it's still the Thinking Real Estate show. And we have joining us Jackie Austin. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
Good. Laura left me with her cold, so
That's,
might sound a little different.
it always sounds worse in your head than it does in reality. I mean, I didn't even know unless you had said something. So.
Yeah.
And Ron Ellison joining us here today.
Yeah, Ron was my lucky guest here.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think we gave you some notice this time, though, didn't we?
That is true.
A couple of weeks notice.
I didn't know what to do with all that notice.
Yeah, normally.
But you know, Mark, this is kind of like my office. You know, if Laura's listening down wherever it's warm, Jackie is the brains of this. You know,
Okay.
Jackie sits there with a camera. She does her research, just like my office. I get all the credit for all my people that do all the good work for me.
So, yeah.
So I know who's in charge with
There you
Laura's
go.
show.
See? There you go.
Yeah.
So, well, it's a new year. Exciting.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Laura left me with a list of topics. Do you have anything that you want to talk about?
I always look forward to your statistics in your newsletter.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to do them since Laura left. I've just been a little swamped. So, yeah, well, I'll get to those next week maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the following
Well,
week.
Just make them up.
Well,
Yeah, we could do
but
that.
again, last time we talked, I think, foreclosures were still about 45% of the
Yeah,
market?
they were about 45% last I knew. And then short sales were slipping a little bit. We were down, I think, just over between 3 and 4% of our market.
You know, and that's the frustrating thing that I see, Jackie, is that you would think that a lender would want to do a short sale.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting, I think, the national media says they're supposed to be getting easier. I think they're getting tougher.
They are getting tougher.
And that makes no sense, because with a short sale, they get it off the books, they don't have to foreclose, they don't have to winterize.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that it's getting harder and harder to do a short sale. And it's frustrating.
Right. Well, I was glad to see yesterday when I was reading through some newspapers that part of the plan that Obama put in place was the renewal of the waiving of the 1099s for short
Right.
sales. I was very glad to see that. I was very nervous that wasn't going to happen, but that will help keep short sales moving at least a little bit, because if that had not gone through, I think short sales would have just stopped completely.
Because there would have been no advantage whatsoever for a seller, because
Right.
they'd have been forced to pay taxes on it.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, that was a good move. Thanks to the National Association of Realtors for pushing that one through, I'm sure.
Right.
So, let's see what else. Statistics. I know we're still low on listings right now.
which is a good thing.
That is good
You know.
for sellers. Not so good for buyers.
Well, I guess if I'm a buyer, I'm still values are down.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a buyer, it's still a great market. When you
Oh,
look
yeah,
at you look at
definitely is.
interest rates, if a buyer is worried about inventory, a buyer should be out there every day looking.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not going to see it get much better from a
Right.
buyer standpoint as
One-
far as looking at the rates.
One thing I am seeing more of is the buyers actually making decisions. That used to be there were so many listings out there, they'd want to see them all before they made a decision. Now there's not as many, so they're actually making decisions because they know the ones they like are going to go quicker, which is good.
Right.
So I like that.
I mean, last year compared to the year before, I think it was a great year for a lot of real estate people. I've heard a lot of positive things. I've heard a lot of agents say that they've had the best year they've had in a long time. So that's promising, and I hope it carries over again, because inventory's down. If you're a seller, that's a good thing.
Yep, it is.
And again, with the rates down, if you're a buyer, it's a great market.
Exactly. So, well, let's see. One of the topics Laura left was reasons to list with a local agent. We could have kind of expanded that to the reasons to use local people.
True.
I know one thing that we've talked about in the past is using local title companies, and since you're here, we can talk about that. All these foreclosure people out there are using non-local title companies and trying to force buyers to use them. I actually had one a couple of weeks ago where in the bank addendum that the buyer had to sign, it actually said that the buyer could not use their own local title company for their
Right.
side of the deal. And that was the first time I had actually seen that type of thing.
Well, there was actually a Fannie Mae addendum that came out, I think, December 12th, that discourages a buyer from using a local title company financially. Now, again, you know, and we could talk about it, but I have to be careful because one of our local title companies is owned by Attorney's Title, Warranty Title,
Right.
Trot and Trot. It's a local company, they do good work, and
Oh, yeah,
so
they do.
I have to be careful because if you're dealing with them, you're gonna get the good service because they are good people, they're local people. But what you're talking about, Jackie, is some of these other ones that are in the Detroit area who do not know the market, they don't know. A good example in the city right now, we had a lot of street improvements. And you look at a listing and you see a new street and you do a title search and you don't see an assessment. Well, the city does it a little bit different. That assessment on a lot of this street work that was done a year ago isn't going to come out till May. A buyer can walk in, get an out-of-town title company that doesn't know local custom and how to check this stuff out. Buyer moves in, and in May they're going to get a nastygram saying you owe some more money. So whether it's the water department or some of the things that we check because you're local and know it, yeah, Fannie Mae has taken away some of the financial advantages. But if you're a good buyer's agent, you're going to look at your buyer and say, you know, there still is a reason.
Right, it's worth it.
It is worth it, whether it's a local title company or a local lender, because your local lenders know some of the little quirks.
Yeah, well, on that same deal that we had the local title company issue, that buyer had originally started with an out-of-town lender, and they had written an offer on a house, and the lender took, it was about 4 months to do their work, and then they ended up not getting that house because they just kind of ran out of time. The seller just gave up and said, forget it, I'm not going to wait for your lender anymore. So they switched to a local lender, and within probably 2 months they were in their house.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of nice to be able to contact that lender. The out-of-town lender, I'd call him and he wouldn't call me back or anything like that. So I was very encouraging to get them to a local lender.
Yeah.
So it made a world of difference.
You know, and when you talk about local lenders, another little quirk that we have is some of our townships with sewer assessments, where your sewer assessment is billed in your winter tax bill.
Yep.
And in the old days, if you got a freestanding assessment that was billed on its own, most lenders want that assessment paid off, because if you don't pay it when it comes due, it could go delinquent like your taxes and create a problem. And the fact that it's in your winter tax bill, most of your local lenders will allow that to be assumed by the buyer. Everybody locally knows it, and probably one of the biggest problems we have in those markets, and some of them are in Grass Lake, Napoleon, Columbia, out-of-town lenders do not understand that sewer assessment issue, and they blow deals up.
Yeah.
Same thing.
We've had that
Deal
happen.
blows up, go to a local lender, they understand it. I had a phone call yesterday from a seller who's trying to sell on their own and thinks she has a deal, and I said, find out who their lender is, because that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal.
So.
Well, we've seen quite a few people using out-of-town agents, which just seems bizarre to me. I don't know why you'd use somebody that doesn't know the market or isn't living in the market. I don't know. Do you, on the title side, do you see trouble with that?
Well, it's the same issues. The local agents know about the assessments. They know. Biggest thing we see with out-of-town agents is tax proration.
Oh, yes.
You know,
that's
a
huge
tax
one.
proration is a local custom. It is not a state law. And probably the biggest problem that I run into every year is misunderstanding of how taxes are prorated.
Yep.
And with an out-of-town agent, and I'll go east of here, Washtenaw, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, they all treat taxes normally as paid in advance. They think we're nuts.
Yeah.
And there's always a misunderstanding, and they don't address it with buyers and sellers. And at the last minute, again, you've got a closing problem where the tax proration can create a problem for the buyer
Right.
if they use a proration in advance. So
Yeah, the other, and it causes an issue because people aren't reading the contracts. If they read the contracts right up front, sometimes that might solve some issues. But, the tax proration issue is a huge one. It can make $1,000 difference. In some cases we've had that happen where an out of town, we had one where we were the buyer's agent for an out of town, they were buying in Washtenaw County, and we don't do a lot of business over there, but our contract spells out exactly how the tax proration is going to work. The listing agent didn't read it, and it made about $1,000 difference for their seller. Their seller lost $1,000.
And they want to make it your problem.
Yes,
In other words,
they
they didn't read the contract,
Yeah.
and it's an advantage because you're a buyer's agent, you're looking out for the buyer, and again, at the last minute, they want to make it your problem where you did nothing wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
So, just things like that, knowing the contracts locally, knowing the market. I know when we're pricing a house, I can't imagine trying to price a house and not knowing the area that it's in. And if you go to like the Queens area, it's completely different than the Northeast area, things like that. So just knowing the little nuances of the pricing and things like that.
You're talking about using local realtors and local businesses here, but you representing maybe the buyer, what if you're trying to work with a seller who's trying to do it on their own, doing a FSBO? I mean, do you and Ron starts laughing.
Well, I think a lot of people that are trying to sell on their own don't really realize all the stuff that goes into doing a transaction. And especially on the seller side, they have a lot of stuff that they have to do. Buyers usually have a lender that's involved, so they're going to be represented by the lender. They're represented by an agent usually. Sellers usually if they're not selling on their own, they're going to have their own agent and a title company and things like that. So there's all these people that are looking out for you, but when you try to do it on your own, you don't really have the access to all of those resources.
Do people think they're going to be saving money? I would never want to take that on.
Mark,
But do they think they're saving money by just doing a FSBO?
A lot of people do have that
That'd be an
feeling.
understatement. I always have to be careful because for sale by owners walk into my office. In a for sale by owner, normally the buyer thinks they're going to buy it cheaper, the seller thinks they're going to get more. The phone call I got yesterday, the seller said to me, well, I figured out, because I didn't have to pay the commission, I figured out what I could sell it for. And I started asking her questions, and I said, is the buyer asking you for seller concessions? She said, what are those? And I guess they don't understand, in today's market, Jackie, seller concessions are, 50% of the deals or more.
Oh, yeah.
Buyers are looking for that. Sellers don't realize, again, we deal with them, we have to, but there's this misconception that we're both going to save money. They don't understand seller concessions. It's frustrating for us because you want to help them, but then you have to be realistic with them, and they go, wow. And Jackie's right. They think it's easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's tougher today than it's ever been.
And the cost alone in selling a house, people don't take into account everything when they're looking at their bottom line. When we present an offer to a seller, we give them the bottom line. We've spelled out the title insurance, the closing costs fee, the commission fees. So when they're looking at it, they're actually looking at their bottom line. Whereas these sellers that are for sale by owners don't know all those costs, so they can't look at the bottom line. They have to go to somebody like Ron and have Ron walk them through it. So, unfortunately.
And carefully, because, again, the conversation yesterday, did you ask them, are they using an out-of-town lender? Are they using someone local? And is there a pre-approval letter? Because, again, a lot of buyers don't realize it's tougher today than it's ever been to borrow money. As far as 5 or 6 years ago, anybody with a pulse could get a loan.
Exactly.
And this particular seller yesterday was going to take their house off the market now, and they didn't want to close this. The buyer didn't want to close till April 1st. And I'm asking about pre-approval letters and things like that. So
yeah, and there's little nuances like who's going to pay for what inspections that they might not think about things like that. Are they doing inspections first of all, and how's that going to affect the deal? And how's their financing? What type of financing are they getting? FHA, conventional? How does that affect the deal and inspections and things like that as well? They just don't think about stuff like that. So.
Okay.
Definitely like that.
All right.
Other than that, it's easy out there.
Okay,
Right.
Great.
Piece of cake.
I know that wasn't on the list of topics that
that's
Laura
fine.
left for you to discuss.
We like topics.
Okay.
Anything. So.
Did Bill leave any topics? I mean, you can't forget
God.
Bill, can we?
He's been forbidden from giving topics.
Okay.
Let's see some other advantages to using local people. As far as agents, they know the marketing. There's different marketing options out there as far as the local news outlets and doing things like this radio show. An outside agent doesn't have the access to doing something like this, and so knowing what's going on, when people are more likely to visit open houses and things like that. I know in our office we don't do open houses this time of year because we know people don't show up. It's just too cold. It's too cold to get out there. So, out of town agents may not know what the local market is as far as who does what when. Let's see what else is on here.
Well, Jackie, one thing when you talk about local, rural housing has become a big part of financing.
Yes.
And we had a buyer who is using an out-of-state lender doing rural
Oh
housing.
goodness.
And rural housing is only in certain areas. You can't buy a house just in anywhere you want and use rural housing. And I've seen that be an issue, again, where that out-of-town realtor or the out-of-town lender does not know our market, and that house will not go rural housing
Right.
because of where it's at. And
Yeah. Yep, we've had that issue as well. We get people that look at our houses and then realize where it is. Or I've had quite a few over the time where agents have called and said, I want to show this house, and then they call me back and they say, oh, I didn't realize it was in the city, and we're doing rural development, we can't do that.
Right.
So just knowing where a street is a big advantage. So things like that.
and the frustrating thing, and I've said this for years, Mark, is that in our world, whether it's you're a buyer's agent, a seller, whatever, money motivates. And so we've had tough markets, and so here's this out-of-town agent, and all they see is they got a buyer that wants to buy in Jackson, and they forget that to properly represent them, they shouldn't because they don't know the market. They just see dollar signs, and a lot of times the deal blows up.
I'd much rather refer somebody to get money for just telling them a name.
Part of something is better than all of nothing.
Right,
Right, and
exactly.
that's the frustrating thing. So yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, so. Anyway, how much time do we have left?
Oh, you've got minutes.
Oh, good lord.
Minutes. Did you run through everything already?
I know, I was just curious because
No, you got it.
I don't know. It's hard to tell when you're on this side of the mic.
I know.
When I'm standing
'cause-
over there, I can tell. So.
Well, if there's a battery in that clock,
Yeah, exactly. So,
Jackie,
you got plenty of time. You got about 7.
along with that issue, probably one of the biggest things that we've seen in the last 2 years, and I'm going to blame it on government overreaction, are the appraisal issues where third-party vendors are assigning appraisers to do work in Jackson, and they're from out of town. They don't know the market.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest complaints I hear are appraisal issues, and the real estate people can't talk to anybody, and that's frustrating because
yeah, we had that issue quite a bit this year. We had 2 deals that almost fell apart because of the appraisals, and they were both out-of-town appraisers. So we started this a few years ago. When we're representing a buyer, we put in the actual contract that the lender is to use a Jackson County appraiser. So that has helped a lot. And on most of our buyer deals, we get local appraisers. Unfortunately, when we're the seller's agent, it's a little harder to control.
In the process of selling a house right now, the first appraisal, because we're on our second deal, the first appraisal was way low, and the second appraisal that came in was right about where the other houses in the neighborhood are at. Why does that happen? Why aren't they?
A lot of well, an appraisal isn't a science. It's very subjective to what, and it all depends on the properties that are chosen by the appraiser. Some appraisers use very good comparables and come out with a price right away. There was one deal we did where the appraiser just made a lot of mistakes. And they were in our subject property, the property that was being sold. They had missed an entire bathroom, so that bathroom had no value compared in the appraisal. So that right there increased the value just by adding the bathroom that they had missed. And They had used comparables that were nowhere near what this house was looking like, and they had missed quite a few things on what the actual property had as far as features. And then when we got down into actually looking at the appraisal, we found out that they didn't even have, like, they listed a property and the property was never even in the multiple listing service. So we have no idea where they got the property to like, the street didn't exist. So we don't know what happened.
Oh, okay.
So, what we do when the appraisals come in like that, we always make sure we double check them and look and make sure that they got the proper information. Because, appraisers are, they're human, they make mistakes. And so we're just double checking to make sure that everything that is supposed to be on there is on there and that they're using the right area. So
All right.
we do that. That's definitely something.
I would say, Mark, if you could compare the two appraisals, I'm going to bet one of the biggest issues would be in the comps they use.
Yes.
You know,
In
you
the
know,
properties.
and when you talk about mistakes, whether it be an appraiser, everybody's going to get tax assessment notices here in a couple of months. And when you get that tax assessment notice, if there's an issue on value, the first thing you should always ask for, go to the township or go to the city and look at the assessment card and see, do they have the right number of bathrooms and the square
Yeah.
footage and things. Because we're all human, and I kind of joke, if everybody did everything right and didn't make mistakes, I probably wouldn't have a job. So, but whether you're arguing your taxes or looking at appraisal issues, it's okay to double check.
Oh yeah, definitely. We certainly encourage our clients to do it, and we do it for them as much as possible. I mean, when it gets down to, like, right before closing, when the numbers come out, we always check to make sure everything that's on there is supposed to be on there, and everything that's not, or if there's something on there, is it really a cost to the actual buyer or the seller? Are they in the right column? Things like that. And it's not too often that we have to make changes, but occasionally there's one or two things that change, and usually it's a quick fix. But if we wait till actually at the closing table to look at that kind of stuff, then it
Right.
causes an issue.
All right. Very good. So, Laura's beautiful sunny summer right now with
Yeah, I
umbrella
don't know
drink
where
or
she
something?
is. She's
No?
probably relaxing somewhere. I don't know. Making me do all the work.
Don't you think she's listening to us on the internet?
Could be. Could
Possibly.
be.
I would be
She'll
disappointed.
watch it later.
Yeah, she will
All right.
definitely watch it later. So.
All right. Well,
All right.
Jackie, Ron, thanks for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything left with Thinking Real Estate that you want
Just
to leave our
check
listeners
us
with?
out at thinkingrealestate.com, and if you want to list your house, we're looking for listings. So call us at 780-3800.
Jackson's very own News Talk 970 WKHM, just minutes away from Jackson Daily. Your phoned-in comments, concerns, observations, everything. It's all welcome here in just a little bit on News Talk 970 WKHM.